Before I call on the matter of public importance, can I take a moment to welcome and acknowledge the guests of the Honourable John Ruddock in the public gallery with us today. They are Mark Hendricks from Right to Climb, Sturt Boyd-Davis from Narakwal Custodian, Alan Keane from Save Our Summits, Deborah Schofield from Reopen Mount Warning, and Harry Creamer, who is an anthropologist. You are all most welcome with us today. The Honourable John Ruddock.
Mr. President, I move that the following matter of public importance be discussed forthwith: public access to Mount Warning. Mr. President, today I advocate for the opening...
I'll just make clear what's happening. The mover and then the Minister are both entitled to make a statement, not exceeding 10 minutes, on whether this should actually be a matter of public importance or not. And that's so you're not going to be discussing the substantive motion at this point, just why we need to debate it.
Yes.
Yep, great.
Mr. President, today I advocate for the reopening of one of New South Wales's most beautiful ecological destinations, the summit of Mount Warning. I'm not the first to do so. I acknowledge and thank the Honourable Mark Lath for his efforts regarding Mount Warning. The track was first closed in 2020 on the dubious grounds of COVID concerns, because of course you're going to catch COVID off a leaf. The track remained closed, however, after the COVID hysteria had passed in 2022 based on the Wollomban...
There's a point of order that's been taken. The Honourable Penny Sharp.
If you just say that it should urge it, we then vote on it, then you can get into the substantive debate. So
I should now just say I move the matter of public importance.
Yeah, you should just say that it should be brought on now, and then I'll agree with you.
Mr. President, I would like to bring on the matter of public importance now.
Thank you. Does the government wish to respond?
The government supports this being brought on, and we're happy for it to proceed.
Wonderful. The question is that the matter of public importance proposed by the member be discussed forthwith. All those of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The Honourable John Ruddock.
Mr. President, today I advocate for the reopening of one of New South Wales's most beautiful ecological destinations, the summit of Mount Warning. I'm not the first to do so. I acknowledge and thank the Honourable Mark Latham for his efforts regarding Mount Warning. It was closed in 2020 on the dubious grounds of COVID, because of course you're going to catch COVID off a leaf. The track remained closed, however, after the COVID hysteria had passed in 2022, based on the Wollomban Aboriginal Place Management Plan. It was a decision of the previous Liberal National Party government that permanently restricted access to Mount Warning from November 2022. The phrase virtue signalling is overused, but this is a textbook example. In 2021, the National Party member for Tweed, Jeff Prost, hosted a petition to reopen Mount Warning Summit Track and achieved over 1,000 signatures. I thank him for his efforts. Mr. Provost received a tepid response from the former Environment Minister, Matt Keane, who declined to reopen Mount Warning. Mr. Keane based his response on the Wollomban Aboriginal Place Management Plan and ignored the views of the petitioners. Fast forward 3 years to today, and the local community is now more acutely engaged. They are deeply frustrated and want access to Mount Warning restored. For the locals I have engaged with, this is not a left-wing or a right-wing issue. It is a matter of common sense. There has been a significant decline in tourist numbers since Mount Warning was closed, and this is hurting local businesses and the community in general. How can it be that an Australian national park can only be accessed by a select few based on their ancestry and their gender? Surely this is at odds with our liberal democratic ethos. 3 months ago, I launched a parliamentary e-petition to reopen Mount Warning Summit Track, and almost 11,000 residents of New South Wales have signed it. The petition was hosted by myself and Right to Climb founder Mark Hendricks, who I welcome to the chamber today. I acknowledge and welcome to the chamber Narakwal elder Sturt Boyd-Davis, the son of Mount Warning Gulgun Marlene Boyd. A Gulgun is an Aboriginal word for custodian of the mountain. I also thank veteran anthropologist Harry Creamer and Save Our Summit's executive member Alan Keane. They've driven some 800 kilometres to be here today, and I thank them for their commitment to this issue. I thank all the petitioners who signed, all the volunteers who led a box, held rallies and handed out flyers across the state. I particularly want to thank 2GB breakfast host Ben Fordham and TNT host Chris Smith for their ongoing interest in this matter. And I'd also like to thank my staff member William Jennings for his tireless efforts behind the scenes. National parks belong to all Australians. The claim that Mount Warning is an ancient sacred site and that part of its sacredness involves excluding most from access is hotly disputed, especially amongst the local Aboriginal community. It is demeaning to assume that Aboriginals form a monolith of opinion on anything, and in particular this subject. In the year 2000, Widjabul man John Roberts came to be the spokesman for a small group of Bundjalung elders based at Lismore. Roberts publicly advocated for the closure of Mount Warning 24 years ago. He claimed that the site was sacred and should be exclusive to Bundjalung men. Only days later, his cousin, Widgeabil elder Fletcher Roberts, issued a media release fiercely disagreeing, and I will now read that media release. They have had walking tracks up the mountains for decades, but no one has tried to stop people from climbing it before. This claim is a modern invention. This claim is being perpetuated by somebody who is overstepping his cultural responsibilities. Claims are being made that this knowledge came from the very elder who raised me and taught me my own knowledge, but he never told me to not go to the mountain. These people should be mindful of the destruction they are causing to Aboriginal law. The white community needs to wise up to the Aboriginal sectors that try to use their lack of understanding of Aboriginal culture for their own purposes. They should remember the boundaries of their own clan area and cultural law. It is not unusual for clans to have disputes over boundaries, and this happens today as it did in the past, but for people from Grafton to claim they have some jurisdiction over Mount Warning is too far a stretch of the imagination." End quote. Marlene Boyd was a Narakwal elder who inherited the Butharam, an Aboriginal word for the dreaming of her people, from her mother Millie Boyd, who was the Gulgon, the keeper of the Mount Warning. Boyd accused Bundjalung elder John Roberts of telling untruths about Mount Warning. She said, "He has no right to come into my ancestral Narakwal lands and tell such lies about the cultural law of the mountain." Did Marlene Boyd have any problem with people climbing the mountain? No. She beautifully said, quote, "I do not oppose the public climbing Mount Warning. How can the public experience the spiritual significance of this land if they do not climb the summit and witness the creation?" End quote, and it's a wonderful quote. The harm to the local Aboriginal community caused by the former government in closing the park is palpable. Anthropologist Harry Creamer has recently sent the government reports providing a professional analysis of the Wollongong Aboriginal Place Management Plan. While acknowledging that all those responsible acted in good faith, Mr Creamer nevertheless concludes, and I quote, "In my opinion, the Aboriginal Place Management Plan is a disturbing document which overstates the current surviving importance of the mountain, exaggerates the sites and belief, and is heavy with authoritarian overtones. In language reminiscent of Orwell's 1984 Newspeak, the plan calls every person other than initiated and approved stakeholders, quote, unsanctioned peoples. Apart from there being no traditionally initiated men or women still alive for well over half a century, this heavy-handed wording does nothing to promote the spirit of reconciliation and is guaranteed to provoke bad feelings and cause harm." This is still from anthropologist Harry Creamer. "The official planning document seeks far-reaching powers that include closing the Aboriginal place to all but unsanctioned people, to all unsanctioned people, closing the entire national park by extending the Aboriginal place to cover all the park, controlling development in all areas of the Tweed Valley that can be viewed from the mountain, that would impact on aesthetics, connection to country and the cultural landscape, which are integral to the cultural values of Wollongong, and exerting control over the commercial use of photography from the mountain." And they also want to control research, and that's the end of the quote from anthropologist Harry Creamer. "The Aboriginal Place Management Plan is dangerous. Entrenching an apartheid-like entrance exam to access a national park would set a terrible precedent." Harry Creamer further notes that John Roberts is mentioned throughout the plan, but the Boyd family is not. The true local Aboriginal custodians have been ignored and removed entirely from this process. The Aboriginal Place Management Plan did not allow for public exhibition. The consultation was dictated by the secretive Wollongong consultative group behind closed doors. The results of this consultation were deliberately hidden from public scrutiny. If you weren't on the list, you didn't get a say. No council, no business chamber, no community groups were included. The public were denied a voice, including non-male, non-Bundjalung Aboriginals. The 4-year closure of Mount Warning has reportedly cost the local economy over $50 million. My office spoke to former field supervisor for the Mount Warning National Park, Mr Max Murphy. Mr Murphy spoke of the fact that the employment strategy at the time required a 40% Aboriginal workforce and sat on hundreds of panels to hire young, inspired Aboriginal men and women. Closing the Mount Warning summit track was never raised before or during the employment of these individuals. Max said about Mount Warning, "It means different things to different people. So many have a unique connection. A number of families have scattered their loved ones' ashes off the summit track, but are now denied access to that special place." Mr President, I acknowledge that the government did not create this mess, but inherited it. I also want to acknowledge that the Leader of the Government, the Honourable Penny Sharp, has taken a keen interest in this matter and consulted widely. I'm hoping today can be a turning point and that common sense can prevail and provide a firm roadmap to reopening Mount Warning to all. I will be disappointed if the Mount Warning can is kicked further down the road, leaving locals in limbo. Thank you.
Thank you. Order.